Picture this. I'm walking into my best friend's house for a movie night with her and her sisters. Her sisters have already started a movie I knew well enough to recognize as one of the Mockingjay movies. Without skipping a beat, I sat down to watch the scene unfold, unaware that instead of enjoying a movie from one of my favorite fandoms, a deep realization was about to hit me. Okay, and also enjoying a movie from one of my favorite fandoms. That also happened. This scene in Mockingjay Part 1 tells you everything you need to know about who Katniss and Gale are as characters, and it only has 3 lines. While I love the Hunger Games series, I feel like it's largely misunderstood. A majority of its fans would most likely describe the plot by pointing to the love triangle, and while the love triangle works to keep the readers invested in the plot, it's not the focus. But that's for a different video. One of the things I think a majority of people fail to recognize is that these 2 characters, Katniss and Gale, were never going to remain friends at the end of the series. It was only a matter of time before they parted ways, and this scene demonstrates that well. Let's break it down. While I could go into greater detail about everything Katniss has been through, how she works as a character, her worldview, and her and Gale's past, I'm not going to go over that. In fact, this sentence is the only time I'll even mention PETA. Instead, we'll look at it from this scene and the 3 main facts that the scene relies on you knowing. Number 1. Katniss and Gale have been friends for a while. The narrative assumes you recognize this truth and functions in the reality of that fact without any establishing dialogue. Katniss and Gale don't say, "Wow, just like the old days," and I'm not sure the movie ever has them outright state that they've hunted together before. I know that earlier, Katniss makes a list of demands that she gives to Coin, and one of the demands was that she and Gale would be able to hunt in the woods, but this demand was actually taken out of the movie. But thank goodness they included the most important part.
Do you have any other conditions? My sister gets to keep her cat.
It doesn't matter if it was said. Even if I hadn't seen this movie before, if I had walked in on this scene with no other context, I would assume that Katniss and Gale, although I wouldn't know that that was their names, had done this before. They're calm, they're focused, they're not acting at all as I would on my first hunting trip. Yeah, that's right. I live in the South and I've never been hunting, but if you knew me, that's not surprising. Truth number 2. The Hunger Games. While the reality of Katniss and Gale's friendship is shown in the scene, the reality of the games is an assumed knowledge that affects the dialogue of the scene. Despite the fact that the scene doesn't mention the games by name, let alone vocalize that Katniss has participated in them, not just once but twice, the effect the games have had on Katniss is vital to understanding the scene. But we'll get into that later. Lastly, truth number 3. There's a war. There's a war going down, yeah, baby, there's a war going down up there. Anybody? Lightning Thief musical? Just me? Okay. Although we ourselves, at this point of the film, have yet to see the war, it is a fact that District 13 is about to advance their plan to overthrow the Capitol. But Abby, why does this matter to the scene? Hey, I'm glad you asked. The war is the climax of the films, but the plot of the books largely focuses on how the war affects our characters. There are characters who are using others as pawns. There are others who feel the heaviness of it, not just for themselves, but for those around them. There are those who are trying to bring light and help others, and those who live in denial, and those who use their talents. And then there's Katniss and Gale. We see Katniss and Gale hunting in the woods. They found a deer. As Katniss readies her bow, she brushes against the leaves of a tree, causing the deer to look up at them. Unbothered, the deer turns back to its eating. We see Katniss and Gale have different thoughts that sum up their characters and demonstrate why they would never be able to remain friends after the war. Here is where we get our first line of dialogue.
She's not even afraid of us.
Katniss's realization isn't one of a hunter excited to have easy prey to catch. It's not even a passing remark. No, Katniss's words come from a place of grief. Because Katniss knows what it's like to be hunted. Katniss's perspective comes from someone who longs not to live in fear. Someone who has told herself she'll never marry or have kids because what kind of person would bring kids into this kind of world? Someone who wants those things nonetheless. For Katniss, seeing a deer not fear her as a hunter reminds herself that she, a human being, has never had that kind of freedom. The freedom of not having to live in fear of being hunted. Gale misses this.
I've never been hunted before. It's almost not fair.
Okay, where do I start? There's an Instagram comment I saw recently that sums up what's wrong with Gale, but let me build my case first before I get to that. Gale, for Katniss, is a sense of security. He represents the time they spent in the woods, away from the reality of their lives. He's the one who kept her mother and sister safe when she was reaped in the 74th Games. He was her closest friend, so close he was almost like family. We hear him say in Mockingjay Part 2 that he should have volunteered in the 74th Hunger Games and gone with Katniss. If he had done so, she would have never forgiven him. And if it had been down to him and Katniss, well, let's just say only one victor would be coming home. When it comes down to it, there's a line from a song in Hamilton that sums up Gale perfectly.
I wish there was a war, then we could prove that we're worth more than anyone bargained for.
I wish there was a war. While I agree that a war was necessary in order to overthrow the capital, I disagree with how Gale approaches it. Let's look at the text, shall we? We see Gale come up with two ideas that show his lack of care for human lives. First, the nut. That's the name of the base in District 2 during the second movie, the place where she has this epic monologue.
I'm not a slave.
I am. That's why I killed Kato. And he killed Thresh. And Thresh killed Claw. It just goes around and around. And who wins? Always Snow.
And then promptly gets shot.
Because I've never been hunted before.
Is it really so necessary that we take the nut, or would it be enough to disable it? That would be a step in the right direction, says Beatty. What do you have in mind? Think of it as a wild dog den, Gale continues. You're not going to fight your way in, so you have two choices, trap the dogs inside or flush them out. Well, we've tried bombing the entrances, says Lime. They're set too far inside the stone for any real damage to be done. I wasn't thinking of that, says Gale. I was thinking of using the mountain. See, running down the paths? Avalanche paths, says Beatty under his breath. It'd be tricky. We'd have to design the detonation sequence with great care, and once it's in motion, we couldn't hope to control it. We don't need to control it if we can give up the idea that we have to possess the nut, says Gale. Only shut it down. So you're suggesting we start avalanches and block the entrances? Asks Lime. That's it, says Gale. Trap the enemy inside, cut off from supplies, make it impossible for them to send out their hovercraft. You risk killing everyone inside. Look at the ventilation system. It's rudimentary at best. Nothing like what we have in 13. It depends entirely on pumping in air from the mountainsides. Block those vents, you'll suffocate whoever's trapped. They could still escape through the train tunnels to the square, says Beatty. Not if we blow it up. Gale's intent, his full intent, becomes clear. Gale has no interest in preserving the lives of those in the nut, no interest in caging the prey for later use. This is one of his death traps. The majority of the workers are citizens from 2, says Beatty neutrally. So what? Says Gale. We'll never be able to trust them again. They would at least have a chance to surrender, says Lime. Well, that's a luxury we weren't given when they firebombed 12, but you're all so much cozier with the capital here, says Gale. We watched children burn to death, and there was nothing we could do. I have to close my eyes a minute. As the image rips through me, it has the desired effect. I want everyone in the mountain dead. I'm about to say so, but then... I'm also a girl from District 12. Not President Snow. I can't help it. I can't condemn someone to the death he's suggesting. Gale, I say, taking his arm and trying to speak in a reasonable tone. The nut's an old mine. It'd be like causing a massive coal mining accident. Surely the words are enough to make anyone from 12 think twice about the plan. But not so quick as the ones that killed our fathers, he retorts. Is that everyone's problem? That our enemies might have a few hours to reflect on the fact they're dying instead of being blown to bits? Back in the old days, when we were nothing more than a couple of kids hunting outside of 12, Gale said things like this and worse. But then they were just words. Here, put into practice, they become deeds that can never be reversed. You don't know how those District 2 people ended up in the nut, I say. They may have been coerced. They may be held against their will. Some are our own spies. Will you kill them too? I'd sacrifice a few, yes, just to take out the rest of them. And if I were a spy in there, I'd say bring on the avalanches. I know he's telling the truth, that Gale would sacrifice his life in this way for the cause. No one doubts it. Perhaps we'd all do the same if we were spies and given the choice. I guess I would. But it's a cold-hearted decision to make for other people and those who love them. The second is with the bomb. At some point, Gale and Beatty left the wilderness behind and focused more on human impulses, like compassion. A bomb explodes. Time is allowed for people to rush to the aid of the wounded. Then a second, more powerful bomb kills them as well. Gale and Beatty design a bomb that goes off in 2 rounds. The initial bomb goes off, and after, I don't know, medics, your best friend's sister maybe, come in to help the injured, the second part explodes and boom. Yeah. Again, Gale's lack of concern for the lives of the innocent is concerning, which brings me to...
It's almost not fair.
Let's talk about foreshadowing. Gale doesn't care about the deer, which is fine, but the deer represents his view of life in general. Let's say, instead of a deer, Katniss and Gale are out hunting, and they come across a lost, unarmed peacekeeper. What would they do? Katniss would most likely just leave him be. Perhaps she'd take off running or try to hide, but she wouldn't attack unless he tried to hurt her or Gale. Gale would shoot him without hesitating. That's what the deer represents. I bet he'd even make the same remark to Katniss.
It's almost not fair.
He's unarmed, not afraid of a couple of kids from the worst district, but we're armed, and he's not. It's too easy, but he'd do it anyways. Which brings me back to that Instagram comment, which said this. Gale is what would have happened to Coriolanus Snow if he'd been from the districts. And while it's not an exact parallel, I think there's truth here. A man who'd do anything to give himself the life he deserves, who values his own life above the lives of others and puts them at risk for the sake of his own comfort, who kills without much mercy for his own sake, who sees his own circumstances as unfair and not what he deserves, who cares for a dark-haired covey girl. I digress. As Katniss said earlier in reference to the plan that Gale was putting forward, I'm not President Snow.
It's almost not fair.
Not that we don't have the same peace, but that it'd be too easy to kill the peacekeeper. But there's one more line in this scene. It happens a little while later. Katniss and Gale leave the woods and end up by the stream where Katniss will later sing the Hanging Tree. It's calm. Peaceful, even. And for a moment, Katniss allows herself to rest, laying her head on Gale's shoulder.
They want us back.
Gale Hawthorne, they will never make me like you. Gale, the same boy who told Katniss they could run away together, he gets his moment alone together, where they could run away and pretend that none of this was real. They're alone in the woods, as they love to be, unrushed and separated from the realities of the games, the war, and their loss. But as soon as the comm goes off, Gale rises to leave, ready for his next order, jonesing for a war.
How many times did your name in today?
42?
Katniss and Gale were never going to remain friends. Gale would always be swept away by the glories of war and his need to demand justice. Katniss would always recognize the heaviness of the loss of war and be aware of the scars that it had brought. Gale would never have the nightmares. Katniss would. Gale would never want the capital citizens to experience peace. Katniss would recognize the human in them. They were doomed from the start of the war. And this scene was warning us. Okay, so, hi. I am in college. I am doing my first semester, finishing up. Whenever this video is uploading, I'll be finishing up. I'm stuck in essay mode. And again, stumbled into my best friend's house. They're watching Mockingjay Part 1, and I was like, oh, bet, I'm having thoughts. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I have my college essays up in a playlist. I also have some other videos kind of like this. You should check out my Megamind video. My content is kind of all over the place, but that just means I have something for everyone. I also did a recap / reaction to Sunrise on the Reaping if you want to check that out. If inclined, you can leave a like or a comment. You can subscribe if you want to see more from me. I'm a Christian girly, so, you know, everything here is clean and fun, and I will mention Jesus every so often. So if that's your thing, feel free to subscribe. I'm kind of all over the place, as I said earlier, and I will demonstrate that with the closing of this video where I will play this now.
Oh no! This is a bad sign!
Really?
Everybody stand up.